Hash token budget analysis. Estimated tokens for response, approximately 2,200 tokens. Story content. Approximately 2,000 tokens, 1,300 words times approximately 1.5 tokens word. Formatting and structure. Approximately 200 tokens. Budget status. Asterisk 2,200 190,000ths tokens equals approximately 1.2% of budget. This is well within budget and appropriate for a creative writing request of this length. Marcus hadn't cried in years, not when his father left, not when he lost his job, not even when the bank threatened to take his apartment. But sitting alone in that corner booth at Tony's diner, staring at the last $20 bill in his wallet spread out beside his half-eaten burger, he felt something crack open inside his chest. The weight of loneliness pressed down on him like a physical thing, stealing his breath, making the fluorescent lights above blur into watercolor streaks. He was 34 years old, and he'd never felt more invisible, more forgotten, more convinced that the world had simply moved on without him. Then the bell above the door chimed. Marcus didn't look up at first. He'd learned not to. Looking up meant seeing families laughing together, couples holding hands, groups of friends sharing fries and inside jokes, all the things that reminded him of what he didn't have. But something made him glance toward the entrance anyway. Maybe it was the hesitation in the footsteps, or the way the cold November air seemed to carry in something more than just the scent of rain. A woman stood in the doorway, her hand clutching that of a small boy who couldn't have been more than 6. Her coat was too thin for the weather, threadbare at the elbows, and her jeans were worn pale at the knees. But it was her eyes that stopped Marcus cold. They held that same exhausted desperation he'd seen in his own mirror that morning. The little boy pressed against her leg, his stomach growling loud enough that Marcus heard it from across the diner. The woman's gaze swept the restaurant, lingering on the register where the owner, Tony, stood with his arms crossed. Marcus saw the silent exchange, her hopeful expression, Tony's apologetic shake of his head, the company policy about loitering without paying. He watched her shoulders sag, watched her bend down to whisper something to her son, watched the child's face crumple in disappointment. They turned to leave, and Marcus didn't think. Thinking would have reminded him that $20 was all that stood between him and complete destitution until his interview on Monday. Thinking would have calculated that he needed that money for bus fare, for coffee, for the appearance of being someone who had their life together. But Marcus wasn't thinking. He was feeling the echo of every time someone had looked through him instead of at him, every time he'd gone to bed hungry with nothing but pride to keep him warm, every moment he'd wished someone, anyone, would see him. "Excuse me," he called out, his voice rough from disuse. "Ma'am." The woman turned slowly, suspicion and hope warring on her face. The little boy peeked out from behind her leg, his eyes enormous in his thin face. Marcus stood, his chair scraping against the linoleum. His heart hammered against his ribs. "My son's hungry," he heard her say those words in his imagination, though she hadn't spoken. "Can we stay a while?" He could feel the question she was too proud to ask hanging in the air between them. "I ordered too much food," Marcus lied, gesturing to his half-eaten burger and barely touched fries. "Hate to see it go to waste. Would you and your boy like to join me? My treat." The silence stretched for 3 heartbeats. 4, 5. The entire diner seemed to hold its breath. "I can't," the woman started, her voice breaking. "Please," Marcus interrupted, and the word came out. More raw than he intended. "I really hate eating alone." Something shifted in her expression, recognition, maybe, of one wounded soul seeing another. She nodded once, then twice, then guided her son toward Marcus's booth before she could change her mind. "I'm Sarah," she said softly as they slid into the booth. "This is Dylan." Marcus. He flagged down the waitress, ordered pancakes and scrambled eggs and bacon and orange juice, ignoring the way his stomach twisted at the thought of his dwindling resources. "Get whatever you want," he told Dylan, who stared at the menu like it was written in a foreign language. "Can I really have anything?" The boy whispered. "Anything you want, buddy." Dylan ordered chocolate chip pancakes with whipped cream. Sarah tried to order just coffee, but Marcus insisted she get a proper meal. As they waited for the food, she told him their story in quiet, halting sentences, the sudden illness that had wiped out their savings, the eviction notice, the car that had broken down 20 miles back, leaving them to walk to the nearest town in the cold. She'd been trying to get to her sister's place in Ohio, but now she didn't even have enough for a phone call. "We'll figure it out," Marcus heard himself say, though he had no idea how. Tomorrow's a new day. The food arrived, and watching Dylan's face light up as the waitress set down a stack of pancakes taller than his head made something in Marcus's chest expand. The boy ate with the focused intensity of someone who didn't know where his next meal was coming from, and Sarah kept dabbing at her eyes with a thin napkin, whispering, "Thank you," over and over until the words lost their meaning and became simply a prayer. They talked as they ate, about everything and nothing. Marcus told them about his upcoming job interview, how nervous he was, how much was riding on it. Sarah shared stories about Dylan's love of dinosaurs, how he wanted to be a paleontologist when he grew up. For an hour, they weren't three strangers brought together by desperation, they were just people, sharing a meal and a moment of warmth in a cold world. When the check came, Marcus laid down his last 20 without hesitation. It wasn't enough. The total was $23 and change. He felt panic flutter in his chest, felt shame burn up his neck. But before he could say anything, Tony appeared at their table. "Someone already paid," the old man said gruffly, jerking his thumb toward the back of the diner. Marcus turned to see an elderly couple in the corner booth, the woman dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief, the man giving a small nod. But Tony wasn't finished. He slid a business card across the table to Sarah. "My sister runs a women's shelter 2 blocks from here. They've got beds, hot showers, and she's always looking for help in the kitchen. Pays not much, but it comes with room and board while you get on your feet." He turned to Marcus. "And you ever wait tables before?" Marcus shook his head, stunned. "You're about to learn. My night guy just quit. Evening shift, starts tomorrow. You want it?" Yes, sir." As they left the diner, stepping out into the November evening that somehow felt less cold than before, Sarah hugged Marcus so tight he could feel her trembling. "You saved us," she whispered. But Marcus shook his head, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "No," he said, his voice thick. "You saved me." He walked them to the shelter, made sure they got inside safe, then headed home through streets that no longer seemed so empty. He'd given away his last $20 and gained something priceless, the knowledge that he wasn't invisible after all. That kindness still mattered, that a single moment of choosing to see someone else's pain could change everything. 3 months later, Marcus was assistant manager at Tony's. Sarah was saving money from her kitchen job, making plans to go back to school. Dylan had gained 15 pounds and talked about dinosaurs to anyone who would listen. And every Sunday morning, the three of them met at Tony's for breakfast, not because they had to, but because they'd become something Marcus had thought he'd never have again. Family. The kind you choose. The kind built not on blood, but on the shared understanding that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let someone see you're hungry too. Marcus still kept that receipt from that November night in his wallet, creased and worn. On nights when the world felt heavy, he'd pull it out and remember. We're never as alone as we think we are. Sometimes we're just one act of kindness away from everything changing. Sometimes the person we save by reaching out is ourselves.